From the massive sloth-like Mapinguari stalking the Amazon rainforest, to the eerie moose pig of the Royal Forest of Dean, these are strange forests that are home to terrifying creatures. The moose pig, also known as the Beast of Dean, is a cryptid legend that's haunted the woods of Gloucestershire for centuries. It's said to resemble a wild boar, but much, much larger, like a wild boar the size of a moose, hence the name. The Royal Forest of Dean first became a hotspot for sightings back in 1802, when locals reported this massive boar that seemed to be knocking down trees, crushing fences, and letting out what could only be described as this unearthly roar. It wasn't until 1807 that a group of local hunters finally tracked it down and killed it, but when they examined the creature, they realized this wasn't any normal boar. The hunters all agreed that whatever they had killed wasn't from around there, nor was it like any creature they'd ever seen, and after that there were no more problems. That is until 1998, when two locals, James Nash and Marshall Davies, were passing through the woods. It was eerily quiet, the birds stopped chirping, there were no sounds of squirrels, there wasn't even a breeze, just this eerie dead silence. Never a good sign in a forest, and that's when they heard it. A deep low growl followed by something massive moving through the darkness toward them. They couldn't even comprehend how big the thing was. It was just closing in so fast. They started running for their lives, and that's when they heard another unearthly roar echo from the woods behind them. To this day, no one really knows what they encountered. Did they just freak themselves out? Were they making it all up? Or is something still lurking deep in the Royal Forest of Dean? In the heart of the Amazon rainforest, there is a cryptid known as the Mapinguari, a beast that's been the subject of local legends for centuries. Some say it's the cursed form of an ancient Amazonian shaman who discovered the secret to immortality, only to anger the gods and be transformed into a giant hairy monster. The Mapinguari is often described as this massive sloth-like creature, standing up to 7 feet tall, covered in long reddish fur. Some versions of the legend say it has backward-facing feet, a flattened snout, almost like a horse, and huge claws. Some describe it having the face of a giant ground sloth. Some describe it having one large eye like a cyclops. But the strangest detail on the creature is the huge mouth on its stomach that it uses to swallow its prey. Sightings of this creature date back centuries, with reports of a horrible, nauseating smell that accompanies it, so bad that it can knock a person unconscious. The Mapinguari is said to move slowly on all fours, but can stand and walk bipedally if needed. Its roar is described as this terrifying thunder-like sound, or a high-pitched scream that sounds oddly, eerily human. In some areas, this creature's been blamed for the deaths of cattle, specifically by tearing out their tongues. Locals claim that the only way to take it down is by hitting it specifically in its belly, eye, or mouth. Bullets and arrows can't take it down. But is the Mapinguari just an ancient myth, or is there really something out there deep in the Amazon rainforest? In the remote forests of Vermont, there's a stretch of land known as the Bennington Triangle, and a lot of weird stuff is said to go on here. People report seeing weird things. Some enter the area and are just never seen again. It's quite the mysterious patch of land, and the whole thing started really in the 1940s, when several people vanished without a trace in the area, including a young woman named Paula Weldon, who was last seen hiking on a popular trail. No sign of her was ever found. And she wasn't the only one. Over the next few years, more people went missing in the same area, and rumors started to spread that there was something sinister lurking in the woods. Amongst the UFO and shadow person reports, you also have stories of a creature simply known as the Bennington Monster. Some describe the creature as being part human, part animal, with glowing eyes and this overpowering presence that seems to distort the forest around it. Others claim it's something more monstrous, with a hulking frame and dark fur, something more like a Sasquatch. But is it possible that some large ape-like creature is responsible for all the unexplained disappearances in the forest? Epping Forest in Essex, England is packed with eerie legends, and many of them have been around for centuries. Take Dick Turpin, for example, the infamous highwayman who's said to have held up in a cave as a hideout. Some believe his ghost still roams the forest, riding through the night on his horse Black Bess, dragging a woman behind him. Then there's Hangman's Hill, where the legend says that a hangman pushes your car uphill. There's also the White Hart, a pure white stag, which according to legend is a signal of impending doom. And you don't want to run into a creature called the Black Shuck either, a ghostly dog with big, fiery eyes, which also brings bad luck. So maybe it's best not to walk through the forest on foot and have a scenic drive-through instead. Well, Epping New Road, which runs through the forest, comes with its own set of problems. People have spotted headless bikers, shadowy black figures, and a horseless carriage along the dark stretches of road. In the forests of the northeastern United States, there's a creature that's as mysterious as it is mischievous, the Pukwudgie. These little tricksters are part of Native American folklore, especially known in the legends of the Wampanoag tribe. Pukwudgies stand about 2 to 3 feet tall. They have grayish skin and large ears. Some stories say they have quills or spines on their backs, almost like strange hedgehog-type creatures. While they're known for being mischievous, Pukwudgies can be a lot more dangerous than you might think. If you offend them or get on their bad side, they get really nasty. They're said to be skilled hunters and can disappear and reappear at will, making them nearly impossible to track. Some versions of the legend say they can shapeshift, turning into animals or even inanimate objects. Now, while some Native American traditions view them as protectors of the forest, there is a darker side to the Pukwudgie legend. They're notorious for pulling pranks on humans, playing tricks that can go from annoying to downright dangerous. Now, this may be the strangest creature I've ever talked about on the channel, Veggieman. So in the woods around Fairmont, West Virginia, there's this strange cryptid known as the Vegetable Man, or Veggieman. It's described as a towering figure easily over 7 feet tall, with a thin, semi-human shape that seems to be part plant. Its arms look like long, thin reeds, and its eyes flash through colors rapidly changing from red to yellow. Then there's the ends of its fingers, which have suction cups with sharp thorns, almost like something you'd find on a carnivorous plant. The most infamous encounter with the Veggieman happened in 1968, when a hunter named Jennings Frederick was out in the woods. Really feels like his first and last name should be swapped, but whatever, that is not the strangest thing about this story. So as Jennings Frederick was tracking some game, he started hearing a weird sound, something like a high-pitched jabbering, almost like a record player spinning too fast. He started following the noise before eventually coming face to face with something he was never expecting to see, even in his wildest dreams. It was some sort of creature. He said it looked almost sickly and weak, but that as soon as he locked eyes with it, it began to communicate with him telepathically. It claimed to come in peace, even asking for medical help, and as shocked and terrified as Frederick was, it seemed the thing meant no harm, at least at first, because suddenly the creature lunged at him, wrapping him up in its surprisingly strong grip as it pierced his skin with its thorny fingers. Frederick found himself mesmerized by the flashing colors of its eyes, but then, just as quickly as it appeared, the creature raced back off in the woods, leaving Frederick completely mortified, convinced that he just encountered something extraterrestrial. That was the only known sighting of the Veggieman. So what do you think it is? An alien, a monster, a hoax? Let us know in the comments. In the summer of 1944, Summit County, Ohio became the scene of one of the strangest encounters ever to hit the state, which is saying a lot for Ohio. People living near Cuyahoga Valley National Park started reporting sightings of a massive python around 15 feet long. At first, authorities figured it was just another tall tale. There are no giant snakes slithering around Ohio, but in this case, it turns out there actually was. See, as more and more reports rolled in, it started becoming clear that people were seeing something, and it turned out that somehow a massive python had been let loose in the wilds of Ohio. As for how it got there, that's still a mystery to this day. Some think it escaped from a private collection, others wondered if someone just intentionally dumped it in the woods. Regardless though, the residents of Summit County weren't too happy about the situation. The snake wasn't just lurking in the woods, it was roaming through their farms, it was leaving these giant indentations in the ground, and it was attacking people's livestock. The locals were terrified, and authorities launched a full-scale search. The python was never found though. By the time fall rolled around, it was presumed the creature was dead, most likely just unable to survive Ohio's winter. But for that one summer, Ohio had an actual wild python on the loose. It seems like an urban legend, but it was not. This next story comes from Reddit user FickleParticular83, who told a story about a harrowing experience his neighbor had while working as a park ranger. It goes as follows. My neighbor used to be a park ranger for the National Park Service. He once told me he was making the rounds at a park in the Appalachian Mountains. It was a gorgeous night with a bright moon, clear skies, and a nice 75 degrees. 30 minutes into his shift though, he feels something liquid tap on his shoulder. First he didn't think anything of it, thinking it could be an animal doing its business up in the tree. He wipes it away, only to notice that the liquid was sticky. Flashed his light on his fingers and saw BLOOD, which startled him, but not as much as what he saw next. When he shined his light up the tree, way up top was the carcass of a mangled male deer. Its body was totally ripped up and twisted. Obviously seeing this is creepy as heck, but what really bothered him was that the tree the deer was hanging from was really tall and difficult to climb. The first 20 feet of the tree had no branches, and the deer carcass was maybe 100 feet up in the tree. I argued it was maybe a cougar or some other mountain lion, but he didn't think a cougar would stash their prey this high up. He also told me there were no cougars in the state, let alone that one park. The squonk is said to be a strange creature that hails from the Hemlock forests of northern Pennsylvania. First written about in 1910 in Fearsome Creatures of the Lumber Woods, the squonk is described as an incredibly shy and weepy creature with a really rough appearance, to say the least. Imagine a small, ugly, wart-covered animal with a face that even a mother couldn't love. Comes as no surprise that the squonk is constantly crying. In fact, if you ever wanted to track one down, all you'd need to do is follow the trail of its tears. The squonk has the ability to dissolve into a puddle of tears when it's frightened or trapped, so if you ever manage to corner one, don't expect to actually catch it. Some versions of the story also say that squonks are especially slow on moonlit nights because they avoid looking at their reflection in the water, afraid of seeing how ugly they are. From Reddit user Skeleton Mole Stir 3000, couldn't say that word altogether. Anyway, this Redditor told a story about a strange photo that their mother took of the woods outside their home. Yeah, notice anything strange about this picture here? Well, here's what the Redditor said. My mom built a walkway to the forest behind our house, lined with driftwood and mossy sticks, and took this picture to show my brother. But she noticed something weird in the background. She cropped the image and circled the figure. I wander around in the forest behind my house all the time, and the worst thing I've seen out there is a coyote or a black bear. Also, I know the layout of trees and plants in my backyard, and it's pretty evident that this wasn't a tree stump. I live by a really tame and shallow forest, and due to its proximity to different neighborhoods, it even has cell service. We figured it must have been a person, so we tried to recreate the image, but a person in that spot just stood out way too much, and it wasn't ever as shrouded or shadowed as this figure. Nobody in my family was outside at the time, and my mom said she was alone when she took that picture. Weirdly, the figure in the picture seems to be the wrong color, wrong lighting, and wrong resolution. It almost looks like it was just photoshopped in. Its color and build looks too pale gray and statue-like to be a person. What is this thing? The user, if you're interested, also attached this image of the woods outside their home without the mysterious figure present. With all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.